First on BBC Two, Newsnight.
His sexuality may, in his own words, be ambiguous, but is the appointment of the new Archbishop of York sending a clear signal about the Church of England's choice of direction?
Good evening. The Church of England has appointed to its second most senior post a man who describes his sexuality as a grey area. He could go on in time to lead the community of Anglicans worldwide. What does Dr. David Hope's appointment tell us about the way the Church is going and the decisions it's going to have to make about gay clergy? The Bishop of Liverpool believes he's the ideal choice to lead the Church, but the Reverend David Holloway thinks he's compromised himself. What constitutes a disability? This man suffering from chronic back pain was told to get a job as a male model or a bingo caller. How will this week's changes to benefit rules affect the sick? I'll be asking the minister responsible why he's bringing measures disability groups have called a persecutor's charter. It's a great time to be a Canadian in Cornwall's fishing communities, but it's okay too if you're Spanish and selling the locals fish and chips. Now, it must be an almost unique distinction for a senior member of the Church of England to incur the simultaneous wrath of both outrage and the Conservative Family Institute. They described the appointment of Dr. David Hope as Archbishop of York as yet another nail in the coffin of Christianity. Dr. Hope's ability to choose his enemies so even-handedly reflects his distinctive position in the Church, an Anglo-Catholic traditionalist who admits his sexuality is ambiguous and opposed the ordination of women. Krishnan Gurumurthy reports now from York.
The Archbishop of York may be the second most powerful job in the Church of England, but his cathedral is arguably the most coveted. Tonight's evensong was as tranquil as ever, despite the months of speculation and the controversy surrounding today's appointment. At his press conference today, Dr. David Hope said he wanted to move the Church forward for the 21st century. He also paid tribute to the good work of homosexual clergy.
Many of our clergy, whatever their sexuality and wherever they stand in this sort of spectrum of sexuality, which has not altogether been my main concern, I have to say, when I interview clergy, when I deal with them, when I go around. I mean, they are human persons, you know. They each have their own particular distinctiveness and so on, and some of them are working in some pretty difficult conditions, actually.
A smooth performance for a man who went into hiding from the media last month after admitting his sexuality was ambiguous. But the Dean of York Minster is confident that northern churchgoers will take to him.
I think that that particular phase in the Bishop of London's life left most of us with the thought that he was a very courageous man and man of considerable integrity. And I think now what has happened, by him being appointed Archbishop of York, that has now been underscored considerably.
3 months ago, the appointment of Dr. Hope as the new Archbishop of York would have raised few eyebrows. Regarded as a traditionalist, opposed to the ordination of women, he's also regarded as a man of great compromise. But a few weeks ago, Dr. Hope gave his now famous interview in which he described his sexuality as a grey area. It came at a time of great and difficult debate for the Church about its attitude towards gay priests. A few days later, a meeting of international leaders from Anglican churches around the world acknowledged that it was now time for a constructive debate about homosexuality. The traditionalists are worried. Like the parishioners of St John's Newland in Hull, where the vicar, Melvin Tinker, is a member of the relatively hardline Reform Council. People here are concerned by the signals the Church of England has been sending out on the topic of homosexuality. And if Dr. Hope visits, he'll hear a call for the Church to take a tougher line.
Unfortunately, one's tended to get rather weasel words from the bishops, no clear statement, and that's not on. We want something which is quite clear, quite unambiguous, not wrapped up in this sort of bishop speak. We want something very, very clear and definite, which ordinary people can understand. And I think if the Church did that, there'd be a tremendous groundswell from ordinary members saying this is about time, this is what we want to hear.
It's men like Bishop Derek Rawcliffe who've so upset those claiming the mantle of traditional morality. To a large degree, he sparked this latest debate when he revealed his homosexuality to Newsnight last month.
It was when a young man there, I was over 50, approached me, and I realized that I loved him very much, but I thought, this is wrong, and I was in a real turmoil.
Bishop Rawcliffe didn't want to face the cameras again today, but he did give us this statement about Dr. Hope's appointment. It's a positive development for gay clergy. However, it may turn out to be counterproductive for them to use his sexual ambiguity to further the gay cause. A warning, perhaps, to people like Andrew, who's the local point of contact for Yorkshire's lesbian and gay Christian movement. He told us he knew several gay clergy who'd been heartened by the willingness for debate, but yearned for equality.
My hope is that the church will come to accept gay people more and more, just as society is accepting us more and more. And that one day it may be possible for a clergyman or a clergywoman to live with their partner openly and publicly in the same way that a heterosexual clergyman or woman is able to live openly and publicly with their married partner.
Dr. Hope's appointment will be a source of encouragement to those who seek a liberalisation of the Church's view on gay priests. But it's perhaps a tribute to his diplomacy that even the most hardline traditionalists also support him.
I think the primate statement brought worries to me because it did seem to hint that we might be looking at a liberalisation of moving away from biblical moral standards. That I believe would be disastrous. But David Hope's statement is actually a firming up on the Christian position that you don't practice it. You don't practice something which is against God's will.
It should be stressed that Dr. Hope has never said that he's gay, but in bygone times, admitting to ambiguous sexuality may well have signalled the end of a career. There will be those who wonder if the promotion of David Hope marks a radical departure for the Church of England.
Well, we're joined now from Liverpool by the Bishop of Liverpool, the Right Reverend David Shepherd. Here in the studio is the Reverend David Holloway of the Church of England Reform Council, vicar in Jesmond in the northeast. Bishop, homosexuality is an increasingly live issue in the Church. The new Archbishop, has expressed his views. Isn't he now hopelessly compromised on the issue?
No, he's not compromised. I'm surprised that in that clip you've just shown us, you didn't include what I know he said today, because I've seen him say it, that he lives as a celibate. That is an honoured, traditional Christian position. Nobody judges somebody for being homosexual by orientation.
I wasn't suggesting his own personal life, but what he has said on the subject, the ambiguity of his own sexuality, whether or not he practices his sexuality, doesn't it compromise him in addressing the serious doctrinal question of what the position of homosexual clergy is?
No, I don't think it does. He as I do, supports very strongly and firmly the statement the House of Bishops issued 2 or 3 years ago, Issues in Human Sexuality. And if people want to know what we're saying about it, I hope they might take time to read, not a very long book, small book. And that is saying that we're not about to change a tradition of centuries. It is saying that we should welcome those Christians who tell us that in their conscience they believe it is right for them to try to build a lasting relationship with somebody of the same sex, that we should welcome them into membership. But when it comes to the issue of being a public Christian, as with an ordained priest, we don't agree with that. There's no place in that statement that we do. What I hope the statement has done and will do is to allow us to lower the temperature a bit and to listen to each other and understand the experience of people whose position may be different from ours.
Let me just bring in the Reverend David Holloway here. Mr. Holloway, you've heard what the Bishop has had to say. You heard what the new Archbishop had to say today. Are you troubled?
Yes, I'm certainly troubled about what the Bishop of Liverpool has said with regard to issues in human sexuality, because here, for the first time, the bishops are virtually validating gay sex or sex outside marriage, and in this case, homosexual sex, lay people. But I'm concerned with the new Archbishop. Can I say, not personally, I find him an attractive, warm, courteous person, but we're dealing with the office of the bishop and not the personality. And the Church of England is very clear because it's governed by its canons, and a bishop is required under its canon to do two things. One, uphold and teach sound and wholesome doctrine, but also negatively to drive away strange and erroneous opinions. That's the language. Now, the bishop, as the Bishop of Liverpool has said, the new bishop, Archbishop of York, personally is following the Christian ethic with celibacy. He's today said that he stands by no clerical homosexual relationships, but I was saddened at the time of the attempted outing to find that one, it is now reported in the London diocese, if he comes across a gay priest in a gay relationship, he, as it was reported, applies the criteria of integrity, personal stability and holiness of life, as though you can be holy in a state of sin. And then secondly, he's going into negotiations with the lesbian and gay movement, and indeed today he said that yes, he's going to stand within the tradition of the church, but also we've got to listen to the mind of the church today.
Right, Bishop, that is fairly common gossip about his position as Bishop of London on gay priests and their relationships. Doesn't it rather give the lie to what the stated position of the church is?
I don't think that he has entered into negotiations with the lesbian and gay Christian movement. The fact that we meet with Christians of such positions and of all sorts of other positions doesn't mean that we're entering into negotiations. I think the statement is a statement. It's not a discussion document. But I hope that it lowers the temperature, that we will respect. Respecting somebody may mean you argue with them.
Can we look at the broader issue here, going beyond this question of gay priests? How, in appointing an archbishop who doesn't believe in the ordination of women, which is now accepted within the Anglican community, can there be anything other than tension at the top of the church?
I think there is tension at the top of the church. But can I say...
But is it intentional?
No, I think...
To appoint a man who appears to have very different views to the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Absolutely, and I think we're in danger in the Church of England of two things. One, of being political. And instead of saying that the Church of England is not about trying to keep everybody happy, the Church of England is actually in good heart in itself because it's grounded in the Holy Scriptures. And it's not grounded actually in the bishops. And the church in the parishes, in many places, there's evangelism, there's the preaching of the gospel, and good things are going on, but we've got confusion at the top. And a lot of people think the way we solve the confusion is by having compromises and fudges, and I don't agree.
Bishop, it does rather look as if this, I wouldn't say it's a Trollopian intrigue, but it does look as if it's a very conscious decision to appoint a man to the other archbishopric who has very different views to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Would you read it that way?
Well, you used words like political, where the great word for me is to do with Christian unity. Here in Liverpool, people know what Christian disunity can do to the church in